Hello, my name's James Paterson and delighted again to be joined with Jaap van Oerle. Hi, Jaap.
Hello again, James.
We said this time that we would have another discussion about internal auditing. We're going to focus on BioPharma, but hopefully this will be interesting for people outside of that. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what kind of career might you be able to get if you work in internal audits. And I'm going to take you through starting in internal audits to team leader to manager to, it says there, CAE, Chief Audit Executive, Head of Internal Audit. And I'm going to take the perspective of the differences between internal auditing and external auditing. What's it like if you come from external audit into internal audit? Yeah, what angle are you going to take?
I will give it a perspective of somebody from within the pharma company to join internal audit as a career step and develop own skills and capabilities to take back to the function of origin. So whether it's a research person or a development person or a marketeer or a finance person, but I'll put some emphasis on what it means to come to internal audit and back to where you came from afterwards.
Perfect, fantastic. So if you're coming in from internal audits, you will have a lot of audit basics and analysis in your background. But what I would say, and I was a head of internal audit for AstraZeneca, is the big thing that you hear external auditors saying once they spent a year or two in internal audit is, I never realized how much broader my assignments were going to be compared to the assignments that I was doing as an external auditor. I was used to analyzing just numbers. Now I'm analyzing different data, management information, and the assignments that I'm delivering are very much more tailored and much less standardized. I used to be doing repetitive work. Now I'm doing really different assignments from one month to the next. Yeah, your perspective on the beginner level.
It's quite similar. And for having had people from the organization joining my teams also on much more senior levels, people with 10, 15 years of experience, one of the takeaways when they started in my team was about the ability to develop critical thinking based on analysis and based on challenging, but challenging in a constructive way, and what comes out of that. Internal audit shows you how you can move from executing orders, so to speak, as fast and as good as you can, is to say, well, wait a minute, is that really the best way of doing things, or is that the right thing to do? And this analysis, challenging, critical thinking is a skill that people have every freedom to develop in internal audit.
Lovely. So if we go up to the next level, again, and as you said, Jaap, you could come in at different levels. You could come in from external audit either at the beginning level or at the team leader level. But one of the things that you will be paying a lot more attention to as an external auditor is this whole theme of communication and writing short, clear reports. In an external audit context, you might be communicating, especially at a team leader level, within the whole external audit team. But when you're in internal audit, you will be issuing audits much more from the team leader level, and therefore having to learn how we're going to summarize all this data into a really clear, concise message, and how do we calibrate, how do we judge whether what we're saying matters, so that when we talk to people, they feel inclined to do what we're requesting that they do. So that would be a key difference from working in external auditing. Jaap, at this level, from your perspective?
Again, it's not so different. It's similar to what you said, but it's this whole ability of, I call it executive reporting. Typically when we report to our peer, our direct manager, we sort of elaborate the story from what we did, how we did it, what we found, and what the conclusions are. Executives, they prefer getting it in a shorter way and the other way around, so that they get the conclusion first. And as you develop from into more details, they can say, I know enough now. And this whole ability to make things faster, relevant, and clear to senior management is a core capability that can be developed. And internal audit is one of those places where you actually do that.
There's a huge development I see most people going through, which is you can be really good at the detail, and that's often what managers expect, but it's that ability to synthesize the detail into something interesting. And I've got here, as you start to get to the next level, you might be thinking at a manager level, well, what kinds of objectives, what kinds of areas should we look at? I've written here GRC liaison. This is the relationship between internal audit and governance activities, risk management activities, and control and compliance activities. So if you have a good internal audit function, you'll have lots of opportunity to work with people in all sorts of other functions. And actually, there can often be career opportunities for people leaving internal audit and moving into risk management or compliance or health and safety, even process excellence, even project management disciplines. And the critical word that we're using, and Jaap's touched on it already, is we're looking for people to come up with insights, not simply a clear message based on analysis, but also something really fresh. And Jaap and I have already talked about this in earlier videos. Jaap, your perspective on the manager level.
Yes, so what I've observed from people that came from different parts of the organization into an internal audit, all of a sudden they're exposed to all the other parts of the organization that they don't have experience with. And this ability to actually explore across the boundaries of the functional or regional geographies within an organization teaches people to look at a wider perspective and to develop the skill to influence without authority. You may enter into a space that you know little about, or where you do not have authority, but where you learn to influence without authority by asking questions, by challenging certain assumptions that were made, and this whole ability to navigate through the organization across boundaries and use how you can influence to achieve what you need to achieve in the end.
Lovely. So just finishing it off in terms of the head of internal audit, the chief audit executive level, and this was an area that I loved, figuring out how does internal audit fit in with where risk management is going, with where compliance is going, and obviously with where the business is going, the strategic side of things. And one of the things that I used to find absolutely fascinating is deciding, well, which areas will we plan to audit this year? And this again is very, very different compared to if you're an external auditor. Typically for an external auditor, there are a set of predefined areas where you'd be expected to audit. In internal audit, it's radically different. You won't just be auditing numbers. You might be auditing compliance with regulations. You might be auditing the way a project is managed. You might be auditing the way a relationship with a third party works, or a commercial activity operates. These are really unusual areas compared to if you're an external auditor. And the other issue, and perhaps Jaap's going to touch upon this as well, is learning to be smart in the way that you influence the organization. I've used the word political savvy, is also something that is a step level different from what you might see in traditional, more rational activities. If you're doing your job well, you will be touching upon sensitive areas. People will often be doing their very best to manage these the best they can. And so there's a real need for diplomacy and constructive criticism, constructive input, rather than just being negative. And as Jaap has touched upon, just pointing out the gaps. Any other comments, Jaap, from your perspective?
Yes, there's a few things that I find fascinating and which I'm passionate about at this level, which is about, I call it navigating the C-suite and executive presence. By doing audits, you will be delivering your messages to the C-suite of the organization. This can be the CEO of a local affiliate, this can be the manager of a plant, this can be the general manager of a division or the entire company, but you find yourself face to face with these people, and not only have you have to show up, of course, in a credible way, but you'll be observing people who have shown that they are credible and progressed a lot in their career. And so there's a lot of good to be observed that you can learn from. And I would even argue the encounters that you have in those audit assignments give you an opportunity, an opportunity to meet people that you can make a mentor or a coach, or that can help you develop yourself to the levels in the organization that you aspire to yourself, and find some career sponsors. The whole navigation of the C-suite is, for me, one of those great opportunities of people that already work in the organization, and to get some visibility as a talent to be developed.
Let's just finish, thanks Jaap, this short talk by talking a little bit about what to look for if you're thinking of joining an internal audit department. What would I and what would Jaap think you should look out for? And I'll make a few comments, and then Jaap will make another. Obviously, the whole way that the recruitment process works and the extent to which you have a sense of good communication with the department that you're joining is important. But certainly one of my bits of advice to people would be really get a sense of the strategy of this internal audit department, and specifically, what does it plan to work on? Now, that can be auditing, but that can also be in relation to advisory work that it's doing. And again, the more inner box traditional the audits are, the more I would be questioning whether that's going to give me the career development that I want. But the more unusual, the broader the range of things in the plan, the more interesting that's going to be for me. I'd be very interested, when I was thinking about joining an internal audit function, about what relationships and activities it has with other departments. So the phrase there would be the coordination. What work are you doing with risk management, with compliance, and with other functions? The more you get the feeling that the internal audit department is on its own, the more that should be a warning sign to you. And then finally, the key point I'd like to highlight in this slide is you really want a sense of how much does this internal audit department invest in personal development and coaching you to have as good performance as you can have. So I used to work in HR as well as an internal audit. As Jaap said, mentoring programs, coaching programs, training both for auditors and on broader skills. I'd be really interested to know what kinds of activities the internal audit department had done before I decided whether it was the right one for me and whether it was going to move me forward. Jaap, anything to build on, or any fresh comments there about what to look for in an internal audit department?
Yes, I have two comments, and they're not related specifically to one of the boxes on your slide, but one thing that I'm passionate about is collaboration. Internal auditors, they work within teams very intensely together, but also with management and their key stakeholders that they're working with. And it's a very intense collaboration dynamics. One of the things that happens there is I call it diversity and inclusion. Diversity is the ability to use the strengths of different people and what they're good at. I use the analogy often about football teams, but the inclusion part is even more important because it's the willingness to actually collaborate. And so the opportunity to work with different people and from all these different people learn from their strengths and building on the strength of each individual, you can achieve great things. And of course, that's not just an internal audit, but it's a skill that you develop that you take with you throughout the rest of your career. Maybe a second comment is about what happens when you go into the field doing audits. And I just want to lift out two areas. There is a lot of behavioral sciences and data sciences that you get confronted with and which you will be developing in internal audit. And these are sciences of the future, the way people work. We're developing more and more insights about how our brains work and how we perform based on our behaviors. And of course, the data sciences and the artificial intelligence to which we're moving in this world. These are two areas that stand in the limelight of the internal audit function and provide great opportunities to develop yourself and your organization.
I think you're highlighting a great point there, Jaap. You know, if you're thinking about joining an internal audit department, how much does the internal audit department pay attention to cultural issues, behavioral issues? That would be an interesting question. And then also, how able is it to plug itself in to all of the data that's in the organization to analyze things? And again, the more that you get a sense that the internal audit department is able to operate on both of those fronts, the more that you'd think this is an internal audit function that's going places. Lovely. I think we're nearly done, Jaap. Thank you so much for doing this, and we'll talk again another time.
Look forward to it. Let's develop some ideas that we can talk about. I hope we get some people that follow this as an interesting conversation. And I want to thank you, James, for this opportunity. I think it was a great idea to do this together and share some of our experience from our career with those who are still building their career for their future. So I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
And me too, Jaap, because I couldn't have done it without you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.